There's a moment in every person's life when you hear something that changes you forever. Not just the kind of change that shifts your perspective for a few hours or days, but the kind that tears away your old self and leaves you standing there, trying to rebuild. I heard those words one evening, and I wish I hadn't. It wasn't the usual fight that couples have, nothing dramatic or loud. No doors slamming, no accusations thrown across the room. Just words. Simple words, spoken in the kind of calm voice that makes them even worse than if she'd screamed them at me. We had been married for 5 years. A solid relationship, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs, sure. Who doesn't? But there was never a doubt in my mind that she was the one for me. There were little things I had noticed recently, small signs that maybe something wasn't quite right, but I brushed them off. She was busy at work, I thought. Maybe just stressed. People get like that sometimes, right? It wasn't until that evening that the reality of it all hit me. The night I learned the truth about everything. I had come home early for once, excited to surprise her. I had planned a simple evening, dinner, wine, and maybe a movie. Just the two of us. But when I opened the door, the sound of the TV was louder than usual, and there was something strange in the air. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't unusual for her to be sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone or watching a show. What did make me pause, though, was the way she jumped when I walked in. Like she hadn't expected me. It wasn't the usual greeting. No smile, no warmth. Just a quick glance up, then she went right back to her phone. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice felt thick with tension. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she scrolled a little more, her thumb moving quickly over the screen, almost as if she were avoiding me. I took a step forward, closing the door behind me, and asked again, "You okay?" She looked up then, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, I saw something in her eyes that I didn't recognize, something far colder than I'd ever seen before. It was like a barrier had come down between us, and suddenly, we were strangers. "I'm fine," she said, her voice too flat. It didn't sound like her at all. It sounded rehearsed, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "Just busy," I nodded, trying to ignore the feeling creeping into my chest, the one that told me something was off. "I thought we could have dinner tonight," I said, hoping to get her to open up, to talk, to be herself again. She shifted in her seat, her eyes briefly flicking to the clock on the wall. "I already ate," she replied. "But, thanks." Her words were polite, but distant, and that's when I felt it, the pit in my stomach that had been growing for days, weeks even, finally swallowing me whole. There was something she wasn't telling me. I could feel it in the air, in her tone, in the way she couldn't even look at me for more than a second. But it wasn't until she spoke again that everything changed. I think it's time we talk," she said, the words so softly spoken that they almost seemed out of place. Her eyes met mine for just a second before she quickly looked away. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "What's going on?" "I've been thinking a lot lately," she started, and I could see her fighting to keep her composure. "And I think it's better if we end this." I felt like the ground beneath me had just vanished. "End this," I repeated, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. Her expression softened for a moment, but it wasn't out of compassion. It was pity. The kind of pity you give to someone when you know you're about to crush their world. "I don't think I love you anymore," she said, the words falling between us like a bomb. The silence after that was deafening. I stood there, frozen, unable to move or speak. The woman I thought I knew, the one I'd shared everything with, just said she didn't love me anymore. It was like I had been punched in the chest, and I couldn't catch my breath. I wanted to scream, to yell, to ask why, but I couldn't make any sound. Nothing made sense. How did we get here? But she wasn't done. "I've been seeing someone else," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, but it sliced through me like a razor. And that's when everything went black. I didn't hear the rest of what she said. I didn't need to. The room seemed to spin as I processed what she had just told me. She was seeing someone else. All this time, when I thought she was just stressed or tired, she had been lying. She had been lying, and I had been too blind to see it. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "But I think it's over. I can't keep doing this. I wish I could tell you that I said something clever, or that I had the strength to walk away right then and there. But I didn't. I stood there, numb, trying to make sense of the world crashing down around me. And as I stood in that living room, looking at her for the last time with that cold, distant look in her eyes, I realized that everything I thought I knew about love, about her, about our life together, was a lie. The worst part? She didn't even seem to care. The silence in the room was suffocating. Her words echoed in my head, replaying over and over, each time sounding more real than the last. I don't love you anymore. I wanted to scream, to ask her how, why, when, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. How did we go from being so in love to this? My mind raced, desperately trying to piece it all together, but the puzzle didn't fit. She looked at me with those same eyes I thought I knew so well, the ones I trusted more than my own. But now, they were empty, cold. She wasn't even the same person anymore. I had spent years sharing my life with her, and now I was a stranger in my own home. You've been seeing someone else, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt surreal, like I was in a dream I couldn't wake up from. Her gaze dropped to the floor, avoiding mine. It's not what you think, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Just a hollow attempt at comfort. I didn't believe her. Nothing she said would change the fact that she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I wanted answers. I needed them. But somehow, I couldn't find the strength to ask. Instead, I just stood there, my chest tight, as she tried to explain herself. I could hear her words, but they sounded distant, like they were coming from somewhere far away. It's not about you, she kept saying. It's about me. I just need something different. Something different. The words cut through me like a blade. Was I not enough? Was everything I did, everything I sacrificed for this relationship, meaningless? I couldn't wrap my head around it. But then she said something that made everything stop. I've been unhappy for a while now, she confessed, her voice cracking slightly. I thought I could fix it, but I couldn't. And when I met him, I realized I'd been lying to myself. I've been cheating on you for months. The room spun. I felt like I was falling, and there was no one to catch me. Months. She had been seeing someone else for months, lying to my face every day. The woman I trusted with everything had been betraying me, hiding it behind a smile, a kiss, pretending everything was okay. I couldn't speak. The anger, the hurt, the disbelief, it was all too much. I thought I was prepared for the worst, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She stood up slowly, her face full of regret, but there was something else in her eyes. Relief, maybe, like a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. I'm sorry, she whispered, but I can't keep pretending anymore. I watched her walk toward the door, her figure fading into the hallway, leaving me alone with the fragments of a life I thought I understood. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I had been blind. Blind to the signs, blind to the changes in her, blind to the fact that she was already gone long before she said the words. As the door closed behind her, I stood there, unable to move. My mind was a blur. What was I supposed to do now? What was I supposed to feel? There was no guide for this kind of pain. There was no map for navigating a betrayal this deep. All I knew was that my world had just been torn apart, and I was left standing in the wreckage, trying to figure out how to survive. I thought I had reached the lowest point. I truly did. The shock, the disbelief. How could I have been so blind? But life has a way of revealing new depths to pain that you never thought possible. The night Mara walked out, I was left standing in the ruins of what I thought was my life. My hands were shaking, my chest tight with the suffocating weight of betrayal. I didn't even know how long I stood there. Minutes? Hours? I wasn't sure. The silence in the house felt deafening, like the air had thickened and wrapped around me, refusing to let go. It wasn't just her leaving that hurt. It was the years we'd spent together, the trust, the love. All of it, shattered in an instant. I wanted to call her back, beg her to explain, but what would I say? What would she even say? And then, just as I thought I couldn't feel worse, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an unfamiliar name. For a second, I stared at it, unsure of whether I wanted to answer. But curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the phone, and when I saw the message, my heart dropped to my stomach. It was from a friend of hers, a woman I had met a few times over the years, Sarah. She was one of Mara's closest friends. I'd always trusted her, always thought of her as part of our circle. But the message she sent me was anything but friendly. You don't know me well, but I think you need to know something. At first, I didn't understand. What could she possibly have to say that would make any sense? But as I read on, the text got even stranger. Mara's been hiding more than just the affair. There's something else you don't know. I blinked, rereading those words. Hiding more? What else could there be? I had just learned she had been cheating on me for months. That was already more than enough to break me, wasn't it? I'm not the only one who knows, Sarah continued. Mara's been keeping something much bigger from you. You're not the only one in the dark. But if you want the truth, you need to meet me. I think you need to hear this. My pulse quickened. What was this? What did Sarah know that I didn't? I had no idea what game she was playing, but something told me it wasn't just some petty gossip. There was a reason she was reaching out to me now, at this moment. Maybe this was my chance to understand everything that had been hidden from me. I debated for a while, but I didn't have much choice. The anger that had been building inside me, the desire to know the full truth, pushed me forward. I replied quickly, telling her to meet me at a cafe down the street, the same one Mara and I used to visit often. The next hour felt like a blur. I couldn't sit still. Every thought in my head was consumed with questions. What did Sarah know that I didn't? Was there more to Mara's betrayal? My mind was spiraling out of control, but I knew I had to hear it from Sarah. She had the answers I was searching for, and as much as I feared what I might hear, I needed it. When I walked into the cafe, Sarah was already sitting at a corner table. She looked up when I entered, her face pale, a look of hesitation in her eyes. I hadn't seen her like this before. She was usually confident, calm, never rattled. But now, she seemed just as nervous as I was. I took a seat across from her, my hands trembling, trying to control the chaos inside me. What is it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated, glancing around the room, as if making sure no one was listening. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. Mara's been hiding something from you for a long time, she began. And I think you need to know, because it's going to change everything. I leaned in closer, my heart pounding. What are you talking about? What is it? Sarah took a deep breath and lowered her voice even further. Mara's affair. It's not the worst thing she's done. My blood ran cold. I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear the rest, but I couldn't stop myself from pressing her. What do you mean? What else could there be? She looked at me with sad eyes, the kind of look that someone gives when they know they're about to destroy you with the truth. Mara's been in debt for months. A lot of debt. And it's not just small stuff. She's been hiding it from you. She's been using you to cover it up. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Debt? Mara? I couldn't believe it. What do you mean using me? I asked, the words feeling foreign as they left my mouth. Sarah sighed and shook her head. I didn't want to get involved, but I can't watch you be the last to know. She's been getting loans, taking money out, gambling it away. And she's been lying to you about it every time you asked. She didn't just betray you with another man. She betrayed you with your own trust, your financial security. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. First, the affair. Now this. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs? Sarah reached across the table, her hand trembling as she put it on mine. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you need to know the full truth. It's not just the affair that should hurt you. It's everything she's been hiding. I sat back, my mind a whirlwind. How could she do this to me? How could she lie to me, steal from me, betray me in such a devastating way? I felt a rush of anger and pain wash over me, but beneath it was something else, something darker, a deep, searing realization that everything I thought I knew about Mara had been a lie, and I didn't know how to process it. But I had one choice now. I had to face it. I had to confront her, because the truth, as painful as it was the only thing that would set me free. The weight of Sarah's words hung in the air like a suffocating fog. Debt, gambling, lies. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could Mara, a woman I had trusted with everything, be hiding this from me? It was like she'd built a whole separate life, one I knew nothing about. My anger was building, and so was the fear that maybe, just maybe, I had missed everything. How many red flags had I ignored? As I sat across from Sarah, my mind was in turmoil. So, she's been using me. I muttered, more to myself than to her. The words tasted bitter. For money. For covering up her mess. Sarah nodded slowly, her face grim. Yes, and it's worse than you think. She didn't just do it once. This has been going on for months, maybe even longer. I stared at her, feeling like I was suffocating. How could she do this to me? I whispered, feeling the sting of betrayal deeper than anything I had ever felt before. I loved her. I gave her everything. You weren't the only one, Sarah said quietly, her voice full of sorrow. There's more. I don't think you'll believe me, but she was planning something big, something dangerous. She was going to get out of the mess by dragging you down with her. A cold chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? My voice was barely above a whisper, but it was as if Sarah's words were the only thing I could hear. Sarah looked around nervously, then leaned in closer, her eyes wide. She was planning to fake a financial crisis. She wanted to make it look like you were the one who had ruined everything, so she could get sympathy from your family, maybe even get your help to bail her out. She was going to make you the fall guy? I felt my stomach drop. Every ounce of trust I'd placed in her felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. So she wanted to ruin me, for her own gain? I asked, the words tasting foreign as they came out of my mouth. Exactly, Sarah said softly, but it wasn't just about the money. There was something more sinister behind it. She was going to play the victim, and you were going to be the one left holding the blame. I sat back, numb. I had always believed that Mara loved me. We had shared so much. How could she? How could someone I trusted so completely, who I thought had my back no matter what, turn into a stranger who would go to such lengths to destroy me? For a moment, I didn't speak. My mind was racing, piecing together fragments of conversations, moments, things that didn't quite make sense before. Was I just too blind to see the truth? Had I been so comfortable in my own naive world that I couldn't even recognize the manipulation happening right under my nose? Finally, I broke the silence. How did you find out about all this? My voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief. Why are you telling me now? Sarah sighed, her face softening. Because I couldn't let her drag you any deeper. I know you're hurt right now, and I can't undo what's been done, but I didn't want you to be blindsided completely. I tried to warn her, but she was too far gone. I had to choose a side. The words felt like a slap. You knew all this time, and you said nothing? She winced. I didn't know how to tell you. But watching her destroy you, watching her lie to you, it broke me. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to digest everything. So, where do I go from here? What do I even do with all of this? Sarah leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving mine. The only thing you can do is face her. Confront her. Because the truth will eventually come out, whether you're ready for it or not. And right now, the only thing you can control is how you handle it. I sat there, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Confront her. Could I even do that? Could I stand face to face with the woman who had betrayed me in the worst possible way? How could I ever trust her again? But something in me, something I couldn't ignore, wanted to get the full picture. I needed to hear it from her. I had to know everything. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. I'm going to see her. Tonight. Sarah didn't say anything for a moment, then finally nodded. Be careful. She's good at twisting things. But you have to know what you're dealing with. As I walked out of the cafe, the cold air hit me like a slap, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. I had a purpose now. The questions were still swirling in my mind, but I wasn't going to let Mara's lies define me any longer. I was going to confront her, and when I did, I would get the answers I needed, even if it destroyed me. I walked through the door of our apartment with my heart pounding in my chest, my hands shaking at my sides. Mara had no idea I was coming. I had to face her. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it tore me apart. The silence that greeted me was unsettling. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, but there was no sign of her. The apartment felt cold, even though it was warm outside. I stood there for a moment, gathering my thoughts. My mind was racing. I had no idea what I would say when I saw her. How could I put into words the torrent of emotions inside me? I heard footsteps in the hallway. She was coming. My pulse quickened. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. When Mara walked into the living room, she froze for a split second. Her eyes locked with mine, and I saw that same coldness, the one I had seen earlier. But there was something else, too, fear. Fear that I was finally going to uncover everything. Why are you here? She asked, her voice barely audible, as if she were trying to keep her composure. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, trying to hold back the wave of anger and pain. How had I been so blind? How had I trusted her so completely? Mara, I finally said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I know everything. About the debt. About the lies. About him. I know what you've been doing. Her face went pale. What? What are you talking about? She stammered. but I could see the panic in her eyes. She was caught off guard, and for the first time, I felt like I was the one in control of the situation. I know about the affair, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I know about the money. About how you've been using me. I know you've been hiding things from me for months. Mara's eyes flickered with guilt, but she quickly masked it with anger. You have no idea what you're talking about, she snapped, stepping back as if to distance herself. You're just making assumptions. None of that is true. I could feel the anger rising in my chest. Don't lie to me, I said, taking a step toward her. I'm not stupid. I trusted you, and you betrayed me. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away for what? For him? For money? Her face twisted with frustration. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head. I had no choice. You don't know what it was like. I was trying to protect us. Protect us? I repeated, the words burning on my tongue. You were trying to protect yourself? You've been lying to me, using me, and for what? So you could escape your own mess? You think that's protection? I was shouting now, but it didn't feel like enough. Nothing I said could undo the betrayal. Nothing I said could change the fact that the woman I loved had been hiding so much from me. Mara's eyes filled with tears, but there was no apology in them. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I couldn't fix it. I didn't know how. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't stand to hear her voice anymore. I don't want to hear your excuses, I said, my voice shaking with fury. I don't care how you justify it. What you did, what you've been doing, is unforgivable. The room went silent. I could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on us. There was no going back now. We were both broken. She, because of the lies she had told, and me, because of everything I thought we had. I think you should leave, I said, my voice cold now, the anger replaced by a deep, aching emptiness. Mara didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, quietly, she turned and walked toward the door, but before she left, she looked back at me. I never wanted this to end like this, she said softly, her voice barely audible. I loved you once, but I wasn't strong enough to fix what I broke. And with that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was left standing in the silence, the echoes of her words lingering in the air. The door closed behind her, and suddenly, the silence was unbearable. My chest tightened, the weight of the conversation still pressing on me like a suffocating blanket. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the spot where she had stood moments ago. She was gone. She had left, and everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was now a lie. The house felt empty without her, but in another way, it felt like a relief. I couldn't decide if I was angry or just completely numb. The anger was still there, simmering just below the surface, but the numbness, it was worse. I had loved her, trusted her, and now, all of that had been shattered. I ran a hand through my hair and sank onto the couch, my mind racing. What now? What was I supposed to do with all of this? I couldn't just go back to normal. I couldn't pretend that things hadn't changed. That much was obvious. I pulled out my phone and stared at it, debating. Should I call someone? Tell a friend? A part of me wanted to reach out for support, but another part of me just wanted to be alone. I needed to think, to process everything. The phone buzzed in my hand, breaking the silence. It was a message. I hesitated before opening it. It was from Sarah. Are you okay? The words hit me harder than I expected. How could I be okay? How could anyone be okay after everything that had just happened? But as much as I wanted to ignore the message, I couldn't. I needed to respond. I typed out a quick reply, my fingers shaking as I did. No, I'm not okay. But I will be. I stared at the screen for a moment, then sent it. It felt strange, trying to convince myself that I would be okay. How could I be okay? The next few hours were a blur. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The conversation, Mara's face, her words. But it didn't make sense. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The woman I had built a life with had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't finished with this yet. There was more to uncover, more pieces to this puzzle that I hadn't seen. I wasn't ready to let go of the truth, not yet. I couldn't let her walk away with all the answers. I needed to know everything. I needed closure, even if it meant digging into the darkest corners of our life together. And so, I made a decision. I wasn't done. This wasn't the end. The hours dragged on. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. It wasn't enough to know about the affair, about the money, about the lies. I needed to know everything. I had to get to the bottom of this, because the truth was slipping through my fingers like sand, and I wasn't going to let it go. I grabbed my coat and walked out the door. My mind was racing as I made my way down the street, not really sure where I was going or what I was looking for. I needed something to fill the silence that had consumed me. I had never felt this alone, not even after everything we'd been through. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about how everything had changed. How one conversation, one moment, could shatter everything. Mara had been my world for so long. I had trusted her completely, and she had shattered that trust in a heartbeat. I reached the cafe where Sarah and I had met earlier. The door was open, and the bell above it rang as I stepped inside. I walked to the counter and ordered a coffee, but I wasn't really interested in drinking it. My thoughts were a whirlwind, and I couldn't focus on anything other than the fact that I was still in the dark. There had to be more. There had to be a reason behind Mara's actions, something I wasn't seeing. I sat at a table near the window, trying to clear my mind. I pulled out my phone and stared at the messages, the missed calls. There was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat. It could be Mara, or someone else. I didn't want to hear her voice, but I needed to know. I tapped the voicemail and held my breath as the message played. It wasn't Mara's voice. It was a man's. "Hey, it's Jason. I know things are complicated right now, but we need to talk. You can't keep avoiding this. You know what's at stake." I felt the blood drain from my face. Jason. The name didn't sound familiar, but the tone in his voice, there was something about it that sent a chill down my spine. Who was this guy? And why was he so insistent on talking to me? I hadn't heard this name before, not in any of the conversations I'd had with Mara. But something told me that this Jason was connected to everything. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting in a cafe, lost in my thoughts. I needed to confront this head on. I needed to find out who Jason was, and why he had called me. I stood up, paid for my coffee, and walked out of the cafe with a sense of urgency I hadn't felt in days. As I stepped into the cold night air, the reality of what I was about to do started to set in. I was going to dig deeper into Mara's life, into her lies. I had to. I couldn't just let this go. I pulled out my phone again, staring at the message from Sarah. "Are you okay?" she had asked. I hadn't answered her yet. But now, I had something else to ask her. Who is Jason? I hit send, then walked quickly to my car. My hands were trembling, not just from the cold, but from the fear of what I might uncover. What if Jason was more than just someone involved in Mara's mess? What if he was the key to everything? The drive back to my apartment felt like it took forever. My mind was racing with possibilities. But one thing was clear. I couldn't rest until I had all the answers. Even if it meant dragging everything into the light, no matter how painful it was. When I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for Sarah's response. My phone buzzed, and I almost jumped out of my seat. I can't tell you much, but Jason he's someone Mara met through work. He's not just a friend. He's been involved with her for a while. More than just the affair. She was using him for something. I don't know exactly what, but I think you're getting closer to the real truth. The message hit me like a punch. She was using him for something. What was she after? Money? Power? My mind reeled as I stared at the screen. But I wasn't going to stop. I was this close. The pieces were finally starting to come together, and I had to see the full picture. Whatever it took. I grabbed my keys, slammed the door behind me, and headed straight for Jason's last known address. I drove through the city in a daze, the weight of everything still bearing down on me. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the tension in my chest almost suffocating. The drive to Jason's address felt longer than it actually was, but I knew this was it, the final step. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it was. When I arrived at the building, I parked across the street. It was a sleek, modern building, one of those places that felt both imposing and sterile. I hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the car. The streets were quieter than usual, the only sound being the hum of the city in the distance. I could feel my heart beating faster now, like I was walking into a storm I wasn't sure I could weather. I approached the entrance, my footsteps echoing in the cold air. I rang the bell, and moments later, the door buzzed open. Jason was waiting for me on the other side. He was taller than I expected, dressed casually, but there was a certain nervousness about him, an edge to his demeanor that made him seem almost out of place. I stood there for a moment, sizing him up. "You must be..." The husband, Jason said, his voice guarded but not unfriendly. He looked at me with a mix of hesitation and something else, regret. Maybe. Where is she? I asked bluntly. The anger I had felt earlier had softened into something else now. Tiredness, maybe even resignation. But it was clear to me now. I wasn't angry with him. I was angry with myself. Angry that I had been so blind for so long. Jason stepped aside, letting me in. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it. I had to face everything. Mara, her secrets, and the reality of the situation. She's not here, Jason said as we walked into the living room. She hasn't been here for a while. She knew you'd eventually come, but she didn't want to drag you into it more than she already had. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean? I demanded. You've been part of this whole mess. You're involved with her, and you're telling me she didn't want to drag me in? Jason looked down at the floor for a moment before meeting my gaze. Mara didn't want things to end like this. She never meant for you to get hurt. But she had her reasons that go deeper than you could know. The conversation was starting to make sense, but it still wasn't clear. I couldn't help but ask, why the lies? Why did she hide everything from me? Jason exhaled slowly, like he was trying to find the right words. Mara was in debt, yes, but it wasn't just that. She was scared. Scared of losing control, of losing the life she built. She thought she could fix it all by herself, but it spiraled. She used me, yes, but not the way you think. It wasn't about replacing you. It was about not wanting to lose everything. I stood there, letting the words sink in. This wasn't an excuse for what Mara had done, but it was a piece of the puzzle I hadn't seen before. Her actions, her mistakes, they didn't make her right, but they made her human. Mara's gone now, Jason continued. She left because she realized that she couldn't keep running. She knows she hurt you, and she's trying to fix things in her own way. Something shifted inside me, a flicker of understanding. As much as I was hurt, as much as I felt betrayed, there was still a part of me that loved her. It was that part that made me want to find closure, not revenge. It was that part that told me there was a chance, no matter how small, for healing. I turned and left Jason's apartment, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't have all the answers yet, and I wasn't sure what the future would hold, but I knew that I was ready to take the next step. I drove back home, my thoughts clearer than they had been in days. The silence that filled the apartment didn't feel as suffocating now. It was an empty space, waiting to be filled again. I wasn't sure if Mara and I would ever be the same, but I wasn't going to live in the past. I wasn't going to let the hurt define me. The phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Sarah. Are you okay? I smiled, knowing the answer wasn't simple, but it was a start. I will be, I typed back. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it.